Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. Blood hit the marble floor before anyone spoke. It splashed near Elowyn Maris's bare feet, bright and impossible to ignore, and the entire great hall froze as if the mountain air itself had turned to stone. The scent came next, iron and wildfire, too sharp, too alive. Every wolf in the room felt it coil in their chest. Elowyn stared at her palm, where the cut should have been shallow. Instead, it pulsed with a glow that wasn't human. Murmurs broke like glass. Chairs scraped. Someone laughed in disbelief, then stopped. Elowyn's heart hammered so hard she thought it might split her ribs. 10 years. 10 careful years of hiding, of breathing like them, walking like them, bleeding like them. She had practiced pain. She had practiced fear. But not this. Not under chandeliers carved from ice and bone. Not before the Alpha King. She looked up, slowly, because she had learned that running only made things worse. The Alpha stood at the dais, tall and still, his shadow swallowing banners and men alike. His eyes locked on her hand, then on her face. Recognition flared, ancient, dangerous, undeniable. King Ruark Valor descended the steps with the calm of a storm choosing where to strike. His boots echoed, one measured sound after another, each step pulling the truth closer. Elowyn's mouth went dry. She could hear the hall breathing, wolves holding it, humans losing it. Someone whispered her name like a prayer. Another hissed it like a curse. Ruark stopped an arm's length away. He didn't ask who she was. He didn't ask what she was. He reached for her wrist. Heat flooded her veins at his touch, a surge she hadn't felt since childhood, since the night her mother had pressed a shaking hand to Elowyn's chest and said, "Hide." His thumb brushed the cut. The glow brightened, answering him. Gasps erupted. Ruark's jaw tightened, as if the truth hurt him. "You bled wrong," he said softly, so only she could hear. His voice carried mountains and war and mercy that had learned to be sharp. Elowyn tried to pull away. He didn't let her. His eyes darkened, gold sinking into black. "And you've been running," he continued, "from something that recognizes me." Paragraph 3, 200 words. The room erupted as he leaned in. Power rolled off him in waves, old law, older hunger. Elowyn felt it crack her defenses like thin ice. "No," she breathed, because if she said anything else, the beast inside her would answer him. Ruark inhaled, slow and deep, and her world narrowed to the press of his fingers and the thunder of her pulse. His canines lengthened. The great hall screamed. Elowyn's knees buckled as his mouth met her neck. Pain flared, hot, searing, then astonishingly gentle. The mark burned into her skin like a promise she had never been allowed to want. Sound vanished. Time stuttered. When he pulled back, the symbol glowed faintly at her throat. Unmistakable. Claimed. The Alpha King straightened and turned to the hall. "She is under my protection," he said, voice carrying to every corner. "And she is not human." Silence fell, heavy and final. Elowyn touched the mark, tears blurring her vision. 10 years of lies had ended in a single breath. She didn't know what frightened her more, the crowd's hatred or the way her heart answered the man who had just ended her hiding. Hands reached for her, some to restrain, some to help, some to hurt. Ruark lifted a hand and the hall obeyed. Elowyn swayed. Memories surged without permission. A burned village, her mother's voice breaking, the taste of ash and fear. She had sworn never to belong to wolves again. Ruark turned back to her, and for the first time, his expression softened. Not pity, not triumph, regret. "You should not have been forced to bleed for this," he said. The words cracked something open inside her. She laughed then, small, broken, because humiliation has a sound, and it surprised her to hear it come from her own throat. "I didn't come here to be seen," she whispered. He met her gaze, unwavering. "Yet here you are." Around them, the hall buzzed with anger and awe. Elders whispered of laws broken and bonds forged. Enforcers tightened grips on spears. Ruark shrugged off his cloak and draped it around her shoulders, hiding the glow, hiding her shaking hands. The weight of it was grounding, infuriating, warm. "You will come with me," he said, not unkindly. Elowen swallowed. The mark throbbed. For the first time in a decade, she stopped running. As they moved toward the doors, a voice cut through the hall, thin and sharp. "She deceived us." Elowen flinched. Ruark paused. The speaker stepped forward, eyes bright with fear dressed as righteousness. "If she lied for 10 years, what else has she done?" The question hooked into Elowen's chest. Ruark looked down at her. Really looked, as if weighing a truth no one else could see. "She survived," he said. The doors boomed open. Cold air rushed in, tasting of snow and pine and coming war. Outside, the night waited, vast and watching. Elowen crossed the threshold beside him, cloak tight around her shoulders, mark burning beneath it. Behind them, the hall erupted again, laws challenged, loyalty strained. Ahead, torches flickered along the mountain road. Ruark leaned close, his voice low. "They will hunt answers," he warned. Elowen nodded, fear steady now, sharp as a blade. "So will I," she said. He smiled. Brief, fierce. The gates slammed shut, and somewhere deep within her, the beast she had hidden for 10 years lifted its head and listened. Snow fell harder as they climbed the mountain road, each flake sharp as a warning. Elowen walked beside King Ruark in silence, his guards fanned out like shadows that knew how to kill without being seen. The Alpha's cloak swallowed her small frame, heavy with the scent of pine, smoke, and something deeper, command. With every step away from the great hall, the shock faded and the ache returned. The mark at her throat pulsed, not painful now, but alive, like a second heartbeat she couldn't quiet. Wolves watched from balconies and towers as they passed, eyes glowing amber in the dark. Some bowed, others stared with naked hatred. Elowen kept her gaze forward because she had learned young that fear fed predators. She counted breaths, left foot, right foot. Don't run. Don't beg. Ruark said nothing, but his presence pressed close, a wall between her and the world. The mountain wind howled, carrying whispers she didn't understand yet. And somewhere beneath her ribs, something old and restless stirred, recognizing a path she had sworn never to walk again. 10 years earlier, Elowen had learned how to disappear in a town that hated wolves and feared what they could not name. Greyhaven sat low in a valley of dust and wheat, where bells rang on Sundays and guns rested above fireplaces. She arrived there barefoot, burned and silent, with a woman's dying words carved into her memory like stone. Hide. Be small. Be human. Elowen scrubbed floors for bread, learned to keep her eyes down, learned how humans smiled without showing teeth. She wrapped her hands before work so no one would notice when she healed too fast. She learned pain the hard way, how to fall and bleed just enough, how to cry when expected, how to swallow screams when bones knit under skin. At night, she locked herself in a cellar and bit down on leather when the moon pulled at her blood. She counted cracks in the ceiling and whispered her name until dawn came. Greyhaven never loved her, but it let her live. For a child who had watched her pack burn, that was enough. Ruark broke the silence as the road narrowed. "You chose a human valley," he said, not accusing, just stating truth. Elowen nodded. "They don't smell the wild," she replied, "and they don't look for it." He studied her profile, the way her jaw tightened when she spoke. "You are young," he said. "Too young to survive alone?" She laughed quietly. "I didn't." The memory rose unbidden. A butcher who taught her numbers, a widow who left soup by the cellar door, a boy who shared apples and never asked why her eyes shone in the dark. Loss followed kindness, like a curse. She learned to leave before questions came. Ruark listened, something shifting behind his eyes. "You could have come to us," he said. Elowin's voice hardened. "Your wolves burned my home." The guards stiffened. Ruark raised a hand, stopping them. His expression did not change, but the mountain seemed to lean closer. "Then someone lied," he said slowly. Words hung between them, heavy with consequences. They reached a fortress carved into the rock, torches blazing against stone. Inside, warmth wrapped Elowin like a memory she didn't trust. Servants paused at the sight of her, at the mark they could now sense, even beneath the cloak. Ruark guided her through corridors etched with runes older than crowns. "You will be safe here," he said, as if safety were a room with a lock. Elowin stopped. "I don't want protection," she said. "I want truth." He turned fully, and for a moment the Alpha King looked like a man carrying too many ghosts. "Then you will have it," he replied, "but not all at once." Anger flared sharp and bright. "That's how lies survive," she snapped. His gaze softened, not yielding. "And how hearts break," he said. He gestured to a chamber overlooking the valley. Firelight, clean water, a bed she did not deserve. "Rest," he ordered gently. "Tomorrow we face what you woke." Elowin hesitated, then stepped inside. As the door closed, the mark warmed, responding to his presence beyond the stone. She pressed her palm to it, breathing through the ache. Hiding had kept her alive, but it had never let her live. Alone, Elowin let the memories come. The night her mother shoved her toward the trees, the howl that split the sky, the fire. She remembered a crest burned into wood, silver and black, a crown entwined with a thorn. The same crest she had seen on banners in the great hall. Her stomach twisted. If Ruark's wolves hadn't destroyed her pack, then who had? And why had she been taught to fear the name Valor? Outside, a horn sounded, low and ominous. Elowin went to the window. Torches moved along the ridges like stars falling out of place. Something was coming. She felt it in the pull beneath her skin, in the mark's warning thrum. Somewhere below, Ruark lifted his head, sensing the same threat. 10 years ago, she had vanished to survive. Tonight, the world had found her again, and it was done waiting. The horn echoed again before dawn, closer this time, dragging Elowin from a shallow, restless sleep. She rose in a rush, heart racing, the mark at her throat hot and alert. Outside her window, fog clung to the cliffs like a living thing, swallowing torches and footsteps alike. The fortress stirred, boots on stone, steel whispered from sheaths. Orders snapped low and fast. Elowin pulled the cloak tighter around herself and stepped into the corridor. Ruark was already there, armor half fastened, eyes sharp with focus. He took her in at a glance, then nodded once. "Stay near," he said. She bristled. "I won't hide behind walls." A corner of his mouth lifted. "Good," he replied. "Neither will I." They moved together down the stairs as another sound joined the horn. Howls, distant but unmistakable, threaded with a bitterness that made Elowin's skin prickle. Not Valor wolves. These voices carried a different rhythm, jagged and cruel. The scent reached her next. Smoke and old ash, the same as that night. Her breath caught. "They're here," she whispered. Ruark's gaze flicked to her, something like recognition flashing between them. "Then the past finally caught up," he said. The gates groaned open, and the fog parted to reveal shapes moving with intent. They came in a wave, wolves marked with scars and iron bands, eyes too bright, movements too sharp. At their center strode a woman with silver hair braided tight against her skull, her smile thin as a blade. Elowin's memory screamed. The crest on the woman's chest was wrong, twisted, corrupted, but familiar enough to twist Elowin's stomach. Ruark stepped forward, voice carrying authority like a weapon. "Morwen of the Cinder Host," he called. "You trespass." Morwen laughed, the sound brittle. "You always loved pretty words, King," she replied. Her gaze slid to Elowen, lingering with cruel satisfaction. I came for what you stole. Elowen's claws burned under her skin, the beast rising in answer. She remembered this woman, hands red with blood, voice chanting over flames. You killed them, Elowen said, the words tearing free. Morwen's smile widened. I freed them, she corrected, from weakness. The air tightened. Ruark's power flared, but Elowen stepped past him, heart pounding. You lied, she said. You let me believe it was Valor. Morwen inclined her head. Lies keep children alive, she said lightly, until they grow into weapons. The first blow landed like thunder. Valor wolves surged, steel and teeth meeting iron and fire. Elowen moved without thinking, years of restraint snapping clean. Her bones shifted with a familiar ache, control hard-won keeping her human shape as she fought. She ducked a blade, drove a knee into a rib, felt it crack. The world narrowed to motion and breath. Ruark fought beside her, a force of nature, efficient, devastating, protecting without caging. Morwen watched from the ridge, eyes calculating. You feel it now, she called. What you are. Elowen snarled, a sound she hadn't made in 10 years. She leapt, closing the distance, but Morwen vanished in a burst of smoke. The cinder host began to withdraw, leaving scorched stone and wounded howls behind. Ruark ordered pursuit, then stopped, sensing the trap. Silence fell, broken only by crackling embers. Elowen stood shaking, blood on her hands, heart racing with a terrible clarity. She wanted me seen, she said. Ruark nodded grimly. And claimed, he added. The mark binds you to my protection. It also paints a target. Elowen met his gaze, fear and resolve colliding. Then teach me to fight as myself, she said, not as something hiding. Later, as healers moved through the courtyard, Ruark led Elowen to a quiet terrace overlooking the fog. The sun bled pale light into the sky, turning smoke into gold. Morwen leads a splinter pack, he said. They worship ruin. They burn villages to force wolves into choosing her. Elowen swallowed. My mother refused, she said. Ruark's jaw tightened. I didn't know, he admitted. The words cost him. If I had... She cut him off. You didn't, she said softly. But you can choose what happens next. He studied her, respect clear. Then I choose to stand with you, he said. He reached out, not touching, giving her space. The mark will answer to your will if you learn to listen. Elowen closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth at her throat. Beneath fear, beneath anger, there was strength. Hers. She opened her eyes. I won't disappear again, she said. Ruark smiled, fierce and proud. Below them, the fortress repaired its wounds. Above, the fog lifted. Somewhere beyond the ridges, Morwen planned her next move. And for the first time, Elowen felt ready to meet it. Training began before the mountain finished waking. Frost still clung to stone when Elowen stepped into the lower yard, the air sharp enough to bite. Wolves circled the ring, some curious, some openly hostile. She felt their eyes like weight on her shoulders. Ruark waited at the center, cloak discarded, sleeves rolled, scars catching the pale light. The mark amplifies truth, he said. Fear weakens it. Control sharpens it. Elowen nodded, jaw set. He gestured. Show me how you move. She attacked without warning, a feint she'd learned on alley streets. Ruark blocked easily, redirecting her momentum, never striking back. Again. Faster, harder. Each time he countered with infuriating calm. Sweat slicked her palms. Frustration rose. You're holding back, she snapped. He met her gaze. So are you. The words landed like a shove. Elowen breathed, let the beast hum without breaking free. She moved again, cleaner, grounded. This time Ruark's eyes lit with approval. There, he said. That's you. Between drills, whispers followed her like smoke. She heard fragments. Deceiver, Cinderborn, marked too fast. A young wolf spat near her boots. Elowen didn't flinch. She remembered Greyhaven, remembered worse. What surprised her was Ruark's reaction. He crossed the yard and spoke quietly to the offender, voice low but absolute. The wolf bowed, chastened. Elowen stared. "You don't need to fight my battles," she said later. Ruark shook his head. "I don't," he replied. "I set the rules. Respect is one of them." The mark warmed at his words, not possessive, but steady. It unsettled her more than fear ever had. Safety was a language she was still learning. That night, the dreams came. Fire without heat. A circle of wolves standing apart from Morwen's flames. A crest, silver and black, raised in defiance. Elowen woke gasping, the mark burning. She followed its pull-through corridors into an ancient chamber carved with names and stories. Ruark was there, tracing a symbol in the stone. He didn't look surprised. "You're remembering," he said. Elowen's voice shook. "My mother stood here." He nodded. "She argued with my father," he said. "She warned us about Morwen." The room felt smaller. "Why didn't you tell me?" Elowen asked. Ruark turned, pain unguarded. "Because truth can wound before it heals," he said. "And because I needed to be sure you wanted it." She laughed bitterly. "I've wanted it since the night everything burned." The next days sharpened her. She learned to listen to the mark without letting it command her, to shift strength into speed, anger into focus. Ruark trained her relentlessly, then stepped back, letting other wolves test her limits. She fell, she rose. Each bruise taught her something new, and between the blows something else grew. Glances held too long, a hand hovering near hers before pulling away. It scared her more than Morwen ever could. Attachment had a cost. She knew that, better than anyone. The warning came at dusk. A runner arrived breathless, bloodied. "Greyhaven," he rasped. "It's burning." The world tilted. Elowen's knees buckled, memories crashing in. Ruark caught her, steady as stone. "Morwen moves fast," he said. Elowen pulled free, eyes blazing. "Then so do I." The mark flared, answering her resolve. She turned toward the gates, fear hardening into purpose. Greyhaven had given her survival. She would give it protection. And this time, she would not disappear. The road to Greyhaven cut through low valleys and broken forest, smoke already staining the sky ahead. Elowen rode beside Ruark, the rhythm of hooves pounding like a second heart in her ears. Every mile tightened the knot in her chest. She remembered the sound of Greyhaven's bell, the smell of bread at dawn, the cellar door that had once meant safety. Now the air tasted wrong. Burned grain, wet ash, fear. Wolves ran ahead in silence, moving like shadows stitched to the ground. Ruark leaned close, voice steady. "We arrived together," he said. "No rushing alone." Elowen nodded, though every instinct screamed to sprint ahead. The mark pulsed, not frantic, but firm, anchoring her. As the village came into view, flames licking rooftops, Elowen felt something inside her fracture and harden at once. This was no raid. This was a message. Morwen wanted Elowen to watch something she loved burn. Ruark raised his fist. The pack fanned out. Elowen slid from the saddle, boots hitting dirt she once called home, and for the first time, she let herself growl without shame. They found survivors huddled near the church, faces streaked with soot, eyes wide with disbelief. A widow Elowen knew clutched her arm, recognition flashing through terror. "You," she whispered. "You were always strange." Elowen swallowed. "I'm sorry," she said. It meant everything she had never said before. Wolves pushed flames back, coordinated and calm. Ruark moved, like a commander born to chaos, barking orders, pulling people free. Elowen followed the pull beneath her skin to the square, where Morwen's sigil burned into the stone. A child cried nearby, trapped under a beam. Elowen didn't think. She lifted, muscles screaming, beam snapping free. The child stared at her with awe and fear. Elowen smiled, small and shaky. "Go," she urged. When Morwen's wolves emerged from the smoke, Elowen met them head-on. She fought clean and fast, self-control honed by training and grief. When it ended, the square was quiet, embers drifting like dying stars. Night fell heavy and accusing. The villagers watched Elowen differently now, gratitude tangled with suspicion. She felt it like cold rain. Ruark approached, blood on his armor, eyes searching her face. "You saved them," he said. Elowen shook her head. "I exposed myself," she replied. "They won't forget." He followed her gaze to the villagers, then back to her. "Neither will Morwen," he said, as if summoned. Laughter echoed from the tree line. Morwen stepped into the firelight, unarmed, fearless. "Look at you," she purred. "A hero at last." Elowen's hands clenched. "Why Greyhaven?" Morwen's eyes glittered. "Because it taught you to kneel," she said. "I wanted you angry." Rourke moved, but Elowen stepped forward first. "You don't own my rage," she said. Morwen smiled wider. "No," she agreed, "but I know how to feed it." With a mocking bow, she vanished, leaving silence and a promise behind. The pack camped beyond the village. Elowen sat alone near the dying fire, the weight of eyes and expectations pressing in. Ruark joined her, offering water. She accepted it without looking. "They'll fear me now," she said. He considered this. "Fear isn't the same as hatred," he replied, "and it's not the same as love." She laughed softly. "You sound like someone who learned that the hard way." His gaze softened. "I did." A pause, then quieter. "The mark chose fast because it recognized strength. But strength invites challenge." Elowen met his eyes. "So does hiding," she said. "I'm done with both." He nodded, respect clear. The fire popped. For a moment, there was only the shared warmth and the ache of what might be lost if they misstepped. Before dawn, a messenger arrived with torn banners and bad news. Morwen had rallied more packs. She was calling it a reckoning. Elowen rose, exhaustion giving way to clarity. Greyhaven smoldered behind her, scarred but standing. She touched the mark, feeling its steady answer. "Then we answer back," she said. Ruark smiled, fierce and proud. As the pack prepared to move, Elowen took one last look at the valley that had taught her how to survive by disappearing. She turned away, finally ready to be seen, and to pay whatever price that demanded. They didn't march back to the fortress. Instead, Ruark led the pack east, into the Ravenspire, past where the land narrowed and sound carried too far. Dawn broke pale and uneasy, light slipping between jagged rocks like something afraid to be seen. Elowen felt the shift immediately. Wolves moved closer, formation tighter. This wasn't pursuit. It was preparation. She rode in silence, the mark cool now, almost contemplative, as if waiting for her to decide something only she could choose. Ruark watched her when he thought she wouldn't notice. She pretended not to see. The air smelled of snowmelt and iron. Somewhere ahead, Morwen gathered fire and belief, the most dangerous fuel of all. When they stopped to rest, Elowen dismounted and stretched stiff legs, eyes scanning the ridges. "You're not thinking like prey anymore," Ruark said quietly. She met his gaze. "I'm thinking like someone who refuses to lose another home." He nodded once, approval restrained but unmistakable. The first test came at midday. A Valor scout returned bloodied, breath ragged. "Ambush, he reported. "Cinder host ahead, they're waiting." The pack stirred, tension snapping tight. Ruark looked to Elowen, not as a shield, but as a choice. "They expect me," he said. "They don't expect you to lead." Elowen felt the weight settle on her shoulders. Heavy, terrifying, right. Memories flickered. Greyhaven's cellar, her mother's last stand, Morwen's smile. She exhaled. "Split the pack," she said. "Lure them high, where fire chokes itself." A murmur rippled. Ruark studied her, then smiled, sharp and proud. "You heard her?" he ordered. "Move." As they climbed, Elowen's pulse steadied. This wasn't hiding. This was choosing. The ambush broke like a wave on stone. Morwen's wolves surged, fire pots arcing through the air. Alowan led her group along a narrow spine, smoke curling uselessly against rock. When the Cinder host charged, they found themselves funneled. Momentum turned against them. Alowan moved at the front, instincts honed, control absolute. She didn't shift fully. She didn't need to. She fought with clarity, calling moves, pulling her people back at the right moments. Below, Ruark's roar split the pass, a signal answered by disciplined strikes. Fire sputtered out. Panic bloomed. When it ended, Morwen's forces scattered, belief cracked by strategy they hadn't anticipated. Elowen stood panting, hands shaking not from fear, but from the realization that she could do this, that she already had. Afterward, mid the quiet of broken plans, Ruark approached her slowly. "You changed the field," he said. Elowen wiped soot from her cheek. "I learned from someone who survived by watching patterns," she replied. His eyes softened. "You survive by enduring," he corrected. "You lead by choosing." The mark warmed, a steady affirmation. It scared her less now. That night, as the pack made camp under a sky scraped clean by wind, Elowen sat with Ruark at the edge of the firelight. The closeness felt earned, fragile. "Morwen won't stop," she said. "She'll push until something breaks." Ruark nodded. "She believes destruction reveals truth." Elowen stared into the flames. "Then we'll show her creation does." The breaking came sooner than expected. A runner arrived at dawn with eyes wide and voice shaking. "The elders," he said. "They've convened. They want judgment." Elowen felt the cold sink in. Judgment meant law, and law meant exposure. Ruark's jaw set. "They fear what they can't control," he said. Elowen straightened. "Then let them see me," she replied. "Not the lie, not the weapon, me." Ruark searched her face. "This path costs," he warned. Elowen touched the mark, steady and sure. "So did hiding," she said. As they turned toward the high council grounds, the wind shifted, carrying the distant crackle of fire, and the knowledge that by choosing to be seen, Elowen had finally stepped into the life that had been waiting for her all along. The council grounds sat high above the valleys, carved into a shelf of black stone where wind never rested. Pillars ringed the circle, each etched with laws older than memory. Elowen felt their weight the moment she stepped inside. Wolves filled the tiers, elders in fur-lined cloaks, warriors scarred and silent, watchers hungry for certainty. This place decided who belonged and who was erased. Ruark took his place at the center, shoulders squared, crown glinting like a promise and a threat. Elowen stood beside him, cloak open now, the mark visible at her throat. Murmurs rippled outward, swelling into a low roar. She held her chin high, even as doubt scraped her insides raw. Being seen was one thing. Being judged was another entirely. The first elder spoke, voice thin and sharp as winter glass. "She deceived us for 10 years. Another followed, deeper, heavier. "She carries fire in her blood. Fire destroys." Elowen listened, forcing herself not to flinch. When Ruark moved to answer, she lifted a hand. The circle stilled, surprised. "Let me speak," she said. The words came out steadier than she felt. She told them of Greyhaven, of hiding and hunger, of choosing kindness over rage every day she breathed among humans. She did not beg. She did not excuse. "I survived," she said simply, "and when Morwen burned what sheltered me, I stood against her." Silence fell, uncomfortable and searching. Truth had a way of doing that. A challenge came from the outer ring, a warrior with ash scars and hard eyes. "Words are smoke," he said. "Prove you won't burn us." The elders conferred in murmurs, then nodded. Trial by fire and bone. Elowen's stomach dropped, but she stepped forward before fear could take root. The trial circle flared to life, runes igniting along the ground. Ruark's gaze met hers, fierce with pride and worry. "You don't have to," he said softly. Elowen smiled, small and real. "I do. The gate closed. Heat pressed in, then pain, controlled, relentless. She centered herself, listening to the mark, to the steady truth beneath panic. She shaped the fire, not feeding it, not fleeing it. When bone blades rose, she moved with clarity, letting strength flow where needed, restraint where it mattered. The crowd watched, breath held as she endured without becoming what Morwen worshipped. When the runes dimmed, Elowen stood swaying but unbroken. Blood marked her skin. Her eyes were clear. The elders rose, stunned into silence. The first elder spoke again, voice altered. "She chose control," he said, "and mercy." Ruark exhaled, tension bleeding from his posture. Judgment passed like a shifting tide. Elowen was granted standing, conditional, watched but real. As the circle emptied, Ruark took her hands, grounding her with warmth and presence. "You did more than survive," he said. "You changed them." Elowen leaned into the moment, knowing the war wasn't over, but neither was she. Acceptance did not bring peace. It brought pressure. The fortress buzzed with it in the days after the trial, whispers threading corridors, eyes measuring Elowen's steps. Some wolves bowed now, careful and formal. Others turned away, jaws tight. Elowen felt every reaction like weather against skin. Ruark kept her close without caging her, inviting her into councils where strategy replaced suspicion, where her words were weighed instead of dismissed. It was progress, but it came with a cost. The mark responded to her growing presence, humming whenever she spoke with authority, warming when others listened. Power, she learned, was not loud. It was persistent, and it drew attention like flame. Morwen answered that flame with cruelty. The first report arrived at dusk, a farmstead raised near the low river. No survivors. The cinder host's sigil burned deep. The second came before dawn. Then a third. Each time Morwen left something behind. Ashes arranged into a crown, a broken bell, a child's shoe, messages meant for Elowen. "She's baiting you," Ruark said, voice tight. Elowen stared at the map, lines blurring. "She's baiting us," she corrected. "She wants us split between mercy and fear." Ruark studied her, then nodded. "Then we don't split." They planned quickly, decisively. Protective lines, false retreats, decoys that would bleed Morwen's confidence dry. Elowen volunteered for the riskier roads. Ruark hesitated, then trusted her. Trust was heavier than armor. On patrol near the river, the trap sprang. Smoke rolled low, fire snapping fast. Elowen felt it before she saw it, the pull, the promise of confrontation. Morwen stepped from the haze, unhurried, eyes bright with satisfaction. "Look at you," she said, "leading wolves who once would have torn you apart." Elowen steadied her breathing. "You mistake fear for faith," she replied. Morwen's smile thinned. "I mistake nothing." They circled. Predators reading intent. "You could end this," Morwen offered softly. "Join me. Burn the old rules. Be honest about what you are." Elowen shook her head. "I am honest," she said. "I choose." The fight was brutal and brief. Morwen testing, probing, then vanishing as backup arrived. But she left a wound behind. Doubt seated in the pack, whispers revived by firelight. That night, exhaustion caught up with Elowen. She sat alone on the ramparts, watching the river reflect stars like broken glass. Ruark joined her without speaking. The silence was easy now, earned through shared danger. "They're afraid I'll become her," Elowen said finally. Ruark followed her gaze. "They're afraid of change," he replied, "and of losing control." She nodded. "Sometimes I am too." He turned to her, eyes steady. "Then lean on me when it's heavy," he said. The mark warmed, not binding, but affirming. Elowen let herself rest against the stone, strength and vulnerability sharing space. Below them, the world pushed back. Above, the stars held. And between those truths, Elowen prepared for the final choice she knew was coming. The reckoning came under a moon the color of old bone. Morwen chose the high valley where sound folded back on itself, where fire could be seen for miles and hope burned just as bright. Elowen felt the pull hours before the scouts returned, an insistence beneath the mark, not command but warning. Ruark listened when she spoke, didn't interrupt, didn't soften the truth. "She wants an ending people will remember," Elowen said, "so we give her one she can't control." They moved fast, lean and quiet, leaving decoys to draw Morwen's outer lines while Elowen led a smaller force along the ravine she'd memorized as a child. Snow fell in fine needles, muting footfalls, hiding breath. When the valley opened, it was already burning. Morwen stood at its heart, flames wreathing her like a crown, her host chanting ruin into the night. The sight tried to pull Elowen apart, fear, anger, memory, but she held steady. This was not the night she vanished. The clash was thunder and sparks. Ruark hit Morwen's flank with disciplined fury, while Elowen cut straight through the center, calling orders that threaded her people through chaos. Fire met ice. Bone met steel. Elowen felt every step, every choice, the mark flaring as if to say, "Yes, this, keep going." Morwen laughed even as ground was lost, eyes never leaving Elowen. "You think they follow you," she shouted over the roar. "They follow power." Elowen closed the distance, heart pounding, voice clear. "They follow trust." Morwen's smile fractured. They fought then. No tricks, no smoke. Strength against control. Morwen struck hard, fast, relentless, trying to crack Elowen's restraint. Elowen answered with patience, redirecting, waiting. When Morwen overreached, Elowen took the opening and disarmed her, sending the flame brand skidding across stone. The valley fell silent, stunned. Morwen staggered, fury giving way to something like disbelief. "Finish it," she hissed. Elowen's claws hovered, the beast thrumming, hungry. Faces watched, wolves, warriors, witnesses. She thought of Greyhaven's bell, of the child she'd freed, of the trial's fire and bone. She exhaled and stepped back. "No," she said. "You don't get to define me." Ruark moved in, binding Morwen with iron and law. The cinder host broke. Belief shattered. As dawn bled into the valley, smoke thinned and the world steadied. Elowen stood amid ruin she had not created. Breath shaking, tears freezing on her lashes. Ruark came to her side, pride and relief warring in his eyes. "It's over," he said. Elowen nodded, knowing it was true, and knowing what remained would change everything. Morning settled gently, as if the world itself was tired of screaming. Snow melted into ash-dark soil, and the valley breathed again. Elowen watched wolves gather the wounded, watched Morwen taken away in silence, her power reduced to a lesson that would be told carefully and rarely. The mark at Elowen's throat cooled, no longer urgent, no longer loud. It felt like a scar that had healed the right way, tender, but strong. Ruark stood beside her without speaking, letting the moment be hers. For the first time since childhood, Elowen felt the strange lightness of not waiting for the next disaster. She had chosen restraint when rage begged for release. She had chosen trust when fear demanded distance. The valley bore the proof. When the pack turned to her, it wasn't with awe or suspicion, but with something steadier, recognition. She met their eyes one by one and nodded. This was not a victory parade. It was an ending that made room for beginnings. The return to the fortress was quiet. No horns, no chants, just footsteps and breath and the soft clink of armor being set aside. In the council grounds the elders waited. Elowen stood before them again, not to be judged, but to be named. The first elder spoke, voice worn and careful. "You ended a war without becoming its echo." Another added, "You chose law without surrendering truth." Ruark remained silent, watching Elowen decide. She felt the weight of it, the chance to bind herself to a crown, to safety, to permanence. She thought of Greyhaven's cellar and the mountain wind. "I will stand with you," she said at last, "but I will not disappear into your rules. I will help write better ones." A murmur rose, then settled. The elders bowed. It was not submission. It was acceptance. Elowen exhaled, a long-held breath finally released. Later, in the quiet of the ramparts, Ruark faced her with an openness he rarely allowed. The mark was law, he said. But what followed was choice. Elowen smiled faintly. I was afraid it would cage me. He shook his head. It answered you because you refused to. Cage yourself. The space between them felt charged but calm. No rush, no claim. He reached for her hand and waited. Elowen placed hers in his, steady and sure. I won't be your symbol, she said softly. Ruark squeezed her fingers. I don't want a symbol, he replied. I want a partner who challenges me. The words settled between them, warm and real. Outside the fortress, the valleys lay open, scarred but alive. Elowen leaned into the wind, feeling at home in her own skin. Seasons turned. Greyhaven, rebuilt with help it once would have refused. Wolves learned to walk its roads without teeth bared. Elowen traveled often, listening, mediating, protecting, never alone, never hidden. The mark faded to a pale silver line, visible only if you knew where to look. Children pointed less. Elders argued better. When fear rose, Elowen met it with patience and proof. She never forgot the girl who learned to disappear. She honored her by never asking her to return. One evening, as bells rang in a valley no longer afraid of sound, Elowen stood beside Ruark and watched lanterns lift into the sky. We changed something, she said. He nodded. Forever, he agreed. At dawn, Elowen stepped onto the balcony alone. The world stretched wide, unfinished and honest. She touched the faint mark at her throat, then let her hand fall. For a decade, no one had known she wasn't human. Then, the Alpha King marked her, and the truth burned bright enough to hurt. What remained was quieter and stronger, a woman who had chosen herself, a people learning to choose better, and a future that did not require hiding. Elowen smiled into the light and walked forward, fully seen at last. If this story moved you, if Elowen's journey made you feel seen, or reminded you of a time you had to hide who you were, don't let it end here. Tap like to help this story reach someone else who needs it tonight. Subscribe if you want more powerful stories about strength, identity, and love that refuses to break. And tell me in the comments, if you were Elowen, would you have hidden or stepped into the fire? Your voice matters here. This channel is built by people from all over the world who choose to be seen. Until the next story, stay brave, stay human, and never disappear again. Ever.